You ever notice how the world doesn't break you all at once? No. It's quieter than that. It's in the laughter when you fall, the silence when you ask for help, the way they look at you like you're already finished. Piece by piece, they take something, your confidence, your voice, your sense that you ever mattered at all. And the funny thing is, they expect you to stay that way. Small, harmless, forgettable. But there's a moment, just one, where something shifts. Where all that pain stops feeling like weight and starts feeling like fuel. Where the same cracks they made let something else crawl out. Something they don't recognize anymore. You know what's funny about pain? It doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't knock. It doesn't warn you. It just walks in like it owns the place and starts rearranging everything inside you. One day you wake up thinking you know who you are, and the next, you're staring at a version of yourself that feels unfamiliar, like a stranger wearing your face. And people love to say pain makes you stronger, don't they? They say it like it's some kind of gift, like it's wrapped in ribbons and handed to you with a smile. But they never tell you what it actually takes. They never tell you how it strips you down first, how it takes everything you thought made you and pulls it apart piece by piece. It starts small. A betrayal here, a failure there, a voice in the background telling you you're not enough. And you try to ignore it, you really do. You tell yourself it's temporary, that things will go back to normal, that you'll bounce back like everyone expects you to. But pain, it lingers, it settles in. It starts whispering louder, repeating every doubt you've ever tried to bury. And after a while, you don't even recognize your own thoughts anymore. You start to question everything. Your worth, your place, your purpose. It's like standing in front of a mirror that only shows you the worst parts of yourself over and over again until you almost believe that's all there is. And here's the part no one likes to admit. Something inside you begins to change. Not all at once. Not in some dramatic explosion. It's quieter than that. Colder. You stop reacting the same way. Things that used to hurt you don't hit as deeply anymore. Not because they matter less, but because you've already felt worse. You've already been pushed to a place where pain became familiar, almost comfortable in a twisted way. And when that happens, you start to see things differently. You start to see people differently. Their words, their actions, their intentions, it all becomes clearer, sharper, like you've been forced to see the truth without any filters. That version of you that existed before, the one that trusted easily, that hoped freely, that believed things would work out just because they should, it starts to fade, and in its place, something else begins to take shape. Something more aware, more guarded, more dangerous, in a way people can't quite understand. Because you're not just reacting anymore, you're learning. Every insult, every setback, every moment you were overlooked or pushed aside, it's all being stored, processed, turned into something else. You begin to realize that pain isn't just something that happens to you. It's something that rebuilds you. Not into who you were, but into someone who sees the world for what it really is. Someone who doesn't need approval, doesn't wait for permission, doesn't crumble at the first sign of pressure. And that scares people. Not because you've become something monstrous, but because you've become something unpredictable. Something they can't control anymore. Because once pain reshapes you, you don't go back. Silence. It's not as empty as people think. In fact, it's loud, deafening, if you really sit with it long enough. It's where everything you've been running from finally catches up to you. No distractions, no applause, no voices telling you who you are supposed to be. Just you and all the things you tried to bury. Most people are terrified of that kind of quiet. They fill it with noise, with people, with anything that keeps them from hearing what's really going on inside their own heads. But when the world pushes you far enough, when it strips away the comfort, the support, the illusions, silence isn't a choice anymore. It becomes your only companion. At first, it feels like isolation. like you've been left behind while everyone else keeps moving forward. You watch people laugh, connect, live their lives like nothing ever touched them, and you wonder what's wrong with you. Why you're the one sitting in the shadows, replaying every mistake, every betrayal, every moment that led you here. And the quiet, it amplifies everything. Every doubt echoes louder. Every insecurity grows sharper. It's like being trapped in a room where the walls are made of your own thoughts, and there's no door, no escape, no way to turn it off. But here's the twist. The longer you stay in that silence, the more it starts to change you. Slowly, almost invisibly. The noise that once overwhelmed you begins to settle. The chaos starts to organize itself. You begin to listen differently, not just to the doubts, but to the patterns behind them. You start to understand where they came from, why they stuck, why they had so much power over you. And once you see that, they lose a little of their grip. Silence teaches you things no one else can. It shows you who you are without the performance, without the masks you wore to fit in, to be accepted, to be liked. It forces you to confront the uncomfortable truths, the ways you let people walk over you, the times you stayed quiet when you should have spoken, the moments you shrank yourself just to keep the peace. And yeah, it hurts. It always does. But that pain isn't the same as before. It's sharper, more focused, like it's cutting away something that doesn't belong anymore. And while everyone else is out there, chasing validation, chasing noise, chasing the next thing that makes them feel important, you're building something in the dark, something they can't see, can't measure, can't understand. Strength that doesn't need to be announced. Awareness that doesn't need approval. Control that comes from knowing exactly who you are when there's no one around to tell you otherwise. People underestimate silence because they mistake it for weakness. They think if you're not speaking, not reacting, not fighting back, then you've given up. They think you've accepted your place, that you've been defeated. But what they don't realize is that silence isn't surrender. It's preparation. It's observation. It's the space where you stop wasting energy on things that don't matter and start sharpening the parts of you that do. Because in that quiet, you're not disappearing. You're becoming something they never saw coming. Rejection. It's almost poetic, isn't it? The way people can look at you, really look at you, and decide you're not enough, not smart enough, not strong enough, not worthy enough to be chosen, to be valued, to even be considered. And they don't even hesitate. A word, a glance, sometimes just silence. And just like that, you're dismissed. Like you were never meant to belong in the first place. At first, it stings. No, not stings. It cuts. Deep enough to make you question everything. You start replaying moments in your head, wondering what you could have said differently, how you could have acted better, how you could have been more acceptable. You shrink yourself, reshape yourself, trying to fit into standards that were never designed for you to begin with. And the more you try, the more you realize something unsettling. It's never enough. It will never be enough. Because rejection doesn't come from your lack. It comes from their perception. And that's where it gets interesting. Because after a while, something shifts. That need for approval, that desperate urge to be chosen, it starts to crack. You begin to see the pattern. The same people who rejected you once would have rejected you again, no matter how much you changed. Not because you failed, but because they needed you to. They needed you to stay small so they could feel big. They needed you to doubt yourself so they could stay comfortable in their own illusions. So the pain evolves. It stops begging for acceptance and starts asking questions. Sharp ones, dangerous ones. Why do you need their validation? Who decided they were the standard? Why are you chasing a seat at a table that never respected you? And once those questions take root, rejection doesn't feel the same anymore. It stops being a wound and starts becoming a mirror, a reflection of what doesn't align with you, what doesn't deserve access to you, what was never meant to hold any power over you in the first place. You start to detach, Not emotionally at first, but mentally. You observe instead of absorbing. You notice how easily people judge, how quickly they discard, how casually they decide someone's worth based on their own limited perspective. And instead of internalizing it, you begin to understand it. Rejection isn't always about you. Sometimes it's about their fear, their insecurity, their inability to recognize something different. And that's when it transforms into something else entirely. Fuel. Cold, steady, relentless fuel. Every no, every dismissal, every door slammed in your face, it all starts building pressure inside you. Not the kind that explodes, but the kind that refines, that sharpens your focus, that pushes you to become so undeniable that their rejection loses all meaning. You stop trying to be chosen. You start choosing yourself. You stop waiting for opportunities. You start creating them. You stop asking for permission. You start taking control. And suddenly, rejection isn't something that holds you back. It's something that redirects you, forces you onto a path you might never taken if everything had gone your way. Because if they had accepted you, you might stayed the same, comfortable, limited, dependent on their approval. But they didn't. They pushed you away. And in doing that, they unknowingly pushed you towards something far more dangerous than acceptance ever could have been. Fear. Now that's a fascinating thing. People run from it, hide from it, pretend it's not there, like ignoring it somehow makes it disappear. But it doesn't. It lingers. It waits. It grows in the corners of your mind, feeding off every doubt, every hesitation, every moment you chose safety over truth. And the more you avoid it, the stronger it becomes. Funny, isn't it? The very thing you try to escape ends up controlling you the most. You've felt it before. That tightness in your chest, that voice in your head telling you not to try, not to risk, not to step out of line. It whispers all the worst possibilities, paints pictures of failure so vivid you start to believe they've already happened. And most people listen. Of course they do. It's easier that way. Easier to stay small, to stay quiet, to stay exactly where you are. Because at least there, fear feels predictable. But when you've been broken enough, when you've already faced loss, rejection, pain that didn't kill you but came close enough, something changes about fear. It doesn't vanish. No, it never does. But it loses its authority. It stops feeling like a warning and starts feeling like a challenge. Because once you've survived your worst moments, what exactly is fear threatening you with? More pain? You've already tasted that. More rejection? You've lived through it. More uncertainty? That's become your normal. And that's where things begin to shift in a way people don't expect. You stop seeing fear as something to avoid and start seeing it as something to use. Every time it shows up, instead of backing away, you lean in just a little closer. You study it. You understand it. You realize it's not some powerful force sent to destroy you. It's just a signal, a reaction, a reflection of limits that were placed inside you, often by people who were too afraid to break their own. And once you understand that, fear becomes predictable, manageable, even useful. Because now, instead of letting it stop you, you let it guide you. Not away from things, but toward them. Toward the very places you once avoided. The conversations you were too afraid to have. The risks you were too scared to take. The version of yourself you kept locked away because it felt too dangerous to become. And here's the part that unsettles people. When you stop fearing fear, you become unpredictable. You make decisions they don't understand. You take steps they would never dare to take. You walk into situations that used to paralyze you. And you don't freeze anymore. Not because you're fearless, but because you've learned how to move with fear instead of against it. That's what turns it into a weapon. Not something loud or obvious. Something quiet, controlled, calculated. While others hesitate, you act. While others overthink, you decide. While others wait for certainty, you move through uncertainty like it's familiar territory. And the same fear that once held you back starts pushing you forward. People can sense that shift. even if they can't explain it. They notice you're different, less reactive, less desperate for approval, less controlled by the things that used to shake you. And that makes them uneasy, because they're still trapped in the same fears you've learned to navigate. Because once fear stops controlling you, it starts serving you control. Now that's the illusion everyone's chasing, isn't it? They want control over people, over outcomes, over how they're seen, how they're treated, how their story is told. They build entire lives trying to manage every detail, every perception, every possible reaction. And yet, the more they try to control everything around them, the less control they actually have over themselves. It's almost tragic, watching people become prisoners of the very image they're trying so hard to protect. Because here's the truth no one likes to admit. You don't control what happens to you. You don't control what people say, what they think, how they judge, how they misunderstand. They'll twist your words, question your intentions, reduce your entire existence to a version of you that fits comfortably in their limited understanding. And if you let them, they'll write your story for you. They'll decide who you are, what you're worth, and how far you're allowed to go. And most people accept that. Not consciously, of course, but quietly. They adjust themselves to fit expectations. They soften their edges, hide their flaws, reshape their truth just to be more digestible. They become characters in someone else's narrative, playing roles they never chose, following scripts they never agreed to. And over time, they forget there was ever another way to exist. But when you've been pushed far enough, when you've been misunderstood, misjudged, and misrepresented more times than you can count, something inside you starts to resist. You begin to question the story that's been told about you. You start to see the gaps, the distortions, the convenient omissions. And then a dangerous thought creeps in. What if none of it was ever yours to carry? That's where control shifts. Not outward, inward. You stop trying to manage how people see you and start deciding how you see yourself. You stop reacting to every opinion, every criticism, every assumption, and start choosing which ones deserve your attention at all. Because not every voice matters. Not every perspective holds weight. And once you realize that, the noise begins to lose its power. You begin to rewrite things, not loudly, not for validation, not to prove anything to anyone, but quietly, deliberately. You redefine your identity on your own terms, not based on what you've been through, not based on how others treated you, but based on what you decide to become. And that's something no one can take from you, no matter how they talk, no matter how they judge, no matter how they try to box you in. They can't control a narrative you no longer share with them. And here's what makes it unsettling. You don't feel the need to explain yourself anymore. You don't rush to correct every misunderstanding. Don't chase every opportunity to be seen in a better light. You let people believe what they want. You let them hold on to their versions of you. While you move differently, think differently, become something entirely outside of their expectations. Because real control isn't about forcing the world to see you a certain way. It's about not needing them to. It's about knowing exactly who you are, even when they get it wrong. It's about choosing your actions, your responses, your direction, regardless of how it's perceived. And once you take that control back, their opinions stop being definitions and start becoming background noise. Power. People misunderstand it all the time. They think it's loud, obvious, something you can see from a distance. They think it's about dominance, about control, about standing above everyone else and proving you're untouchable. But real power, it doesn't look like that. It's quieter, colder. It doesn't need attention, doesn't beg to be recognized, doesn't announce itself with noise. It just exists. And the most dangerous kind of power is the kind that no one sees coming. You don't find that kind of power in comfort. You don't build it when everything is going your way, when people support you, when the world treats you fairly. No, that version of you stays soft, predictable, easy to understand. Real power is born somewhere else, somewhere darker, somewhere most people spend their entire lives trying to avoid. It grows in the moments you were overlooked, dismissed, broken down until there was almost nothing left of you. It takes root in the parts of you that were forced to survive without guidance, without protection, without anyone stepping in to save you. At first, it doesn't feel like power at all. It feels like damage, like something went wrong inside you. You feel disconnected, different, like you've been reshaped into something you didn't choose to become. And maybe you resent it. Maybe you wish things had been easier, that you didn't have to go through everything that changed you. But over time, you start to notice something. The things that used to shake you don't anymore. The situations that would have overwhelmed you feel manageable. The opinions that once defined you barely register. That's when you begin to understand nothing was wasted. Every moment of pain, every setback, every time you were pushed past your limit, it all built something beneath the surface. Something solid, something stable, something that doesn't depend on anyone else to exist. And that's where real power comes from. Not from what you have, not from what people give you, but from what you've had to become just to keep going. You stop needing validation, not because you don't care, but because you've learned how unreliable it is. You stop seeking approval, not because you think you're above it, but because you've realized how easily it can be taken away. And without those dependencies, you become harder to influence, harder to manipulate, harder to control. You make decisions based on clarity, not emotion, on understanding, not impulse. And that changes everything. People notice it, even if they can't explain it. There's something different about the way you carry yourself. Not arrogance, something deeper than that. A kind of certainty that doesn't need to be spoken. A calm that doesn't break under pressure. And it makes them uncomfortable because they can't predict you anymore. They can't push you the way they used to. They can't use the same tactics, the same words, the same pressure points, because those parts of you don't respond the same way. And here's the truth that unsettles them the most. The version of you they thought they destroyed became the foundation for something stronger, something sharper, something they no longer understand. Because power doesn't come from never being broken. It comes from what you build with the pieces they left behind.